So I thought it'd be quite fun to go through with you some of my favorite card decks, so both Oracle and Tarot cards, and kind of show you my decks, but also share with you some things that I think are quite important to think about when you are choosing your deck, whether that's like your first deck or just future decks. There's definitely some things that make a really big difference as to how connected you are to your cards, but also how resonant your readings are. So yeah, I'm going to share some of those things with you. Now, technically this video is for those inside my Intuitive Energy Healer certification or my intuitive development course, but I will be sharing this elsewhere. So although you have probably just heard me say this inside my courses, if you're inside my courses, I do just want to say again that when it comes to working with cards, if you really want those readings that are so resonant that you're like, how did that just happen? Like, they are so accurate. It really comes down to how connected you are to your cards, like almost how attuned you are to your cards. And so although the deck shouldn't really matter, like it really does when you want your readings to be a really resonant reading, but also like when you're working with it as an extension of your intuition. When you pick cards and pull cards, it is the process of law of attraction. Like, you are going to be drawn to the cards that are matching your energy, basically. That is how we choose cards. That is how we get those readings that are like, how did I just pick such an accurate reading that's so accurate and resonant for me? And so, when it comes to law of attraction, it really is this match of energies. Like, you're going to be drawn to the card that is really matching where you are at. And so the more attuned you are to your cards, the more resonant your reading is going to be. So like, your deck really does matter. It really does. Now I'm going to share with you tarot and oracle. I only personally have a couple of oracle decks. I'm definitely more of a tarot fan myself, but I have borrowed some oracle decks to show you some different ones, and some kind of popular ones that I know lots of people love. So yeah, I think to start with, the main thing I want to say is the difference between oracle and tarot. I think either you know that you're drawn to tarot or you know that you're not drawn to tarot, or I feel like you can also just let the deck speak to you. So if a deck really calls to you and you're like, oh my God, I love that deck, and it happens to be tarot, that's your sign. If it happens to be oracle, that's your sign. But I think when it comes to tarot, you either kind of love it and are drawn to it, or you're not. I do feel that. I feel like we either have that kind of love for the practice of tarot. And for those that don't know, tarot itself is a very old divination tool. So it's like over 500 years old. And it kind of started in Europe, in like Italy specifically. But basically, it's a set system. So tarot has got 78 different cards, and those 78 cards are always the same in every single tarot deck. So the artist or the author will have their own expression of those 78 cards, but the 78 cards always remain the same. So there's 22 major arcana, and then there are 56, let's do a bit of maths there, but 56 minor arcana. And so the major arcana are the ones that I think lots of people like recognize. That might be the Fool, like the Devil, the Chariot, the Star, the Magician, like these sort of cards. The minor arcana are the suits. So this is where you have 4 different suits. So most decks, that would be the Pentacles, it would be the Swords, it would be the Wands, and it would be the Cups. So kind of similar to a playing deck, essentially. And within every suit, you then have 1 to king, basically. So the tarot deck is always the same. The meanings of those cards also remain the same. So although an artist or an author might have an expression of what that means for them, the main meaning of all of those cards remains the same. So there's 78 meanings. And some practitioners as well also use them reversed, so then it's double. But not everyone does that. That's definitely something that you just kind of have to feel into if that feels right for you or not. So whatever tarot deck you pick up, you know the meanings of those cards. That's the beauty with tarot. You know, no matter what deck, you know the meanings. It's not more to learn. Like once you've learned them, they're like kind of anchored into you, and you can then play with different and new decks. Now, I love the tarot because I love that it's a set system. I also love that there's so much depth to each card. And although oracle cards can absolutely give you that, I feel like tarot, there's like this layer of depth that comes with them. Because the major arcana are all about big life moments. It's about big life transitions, big energies. The minor arcana is more to do with like smaller energies, more day-to-day kind of energies, but every card represents an emotion or a moment in time or a feeling or a transition that everyone has experienced. And so every card we can all relate to on some level at some point in our life. It's like a life story. And when it comes to the 4 different suits, each suit relates to a different part of us. So the cups relates to our emotions. So it's like ace to king of all of the emotions that we might be experiencing. And then you have the swords, which is all about our mental and mind states, or more about logic. And again, like ace to king of lots of different kind of versions and expressions of that and things that we might be feeling. So it might be that we've got a really strong mental attitude right now. We've got a real logical approach to something right now. It can also be that you're being defeated by your own thoughts, right? Everything in between is within the swords. Then you have the wands, and this is all about passion. This is all about fire. This is all about purpose. This is all about kind of passion projects, so to speak. And so this is a really beautiful suit that I see a lot of in my work. So I work a lot with, you know, obviously entrepreneurs and people in business, but working with this sort of work. And so I see wands a lot because it's all about your purpose, it's all about your passion, it's about your energy, it's about your fire. So you have all of the cards that represent many different states of that. And then you have the pentacles. Pentacles can sometimes be called coins in some decks, but the pentacles is the physical. The pentacles can be money, it can be physical relationships in a sense of kind of physical connections with others more than an emotional connection with others. It can be to do with physical success, like the physical manifestation of things around us. And so again, you have ace to king of lots of different states and ways of being with your physical surroundings. So there's just so much depth within a tarot deck, so much depth. And I love it for that reason. And I love that you can just pick up any deck and know what those cards mean. But it does take time. So oracle, on the other hand, there can be as many cards as the author or the artist wants to create. So you could literally have, you know, 50 something cards, 100 something cards. There's no kind of rules with oracle. And then every card is unique to the author or the artist. So there really are no rules. There's no suits, there's no like major, minor arcana, none of that exists in oracle. It really is like, and I'll just show you an example, a collection of cards that all have their own, very own unique meaning that the author wants to kind of represent or get across. And I will go into this deck in a minute more, but with oracle, it is all completely the artist's unique expression, their words, what they want to talk about. It's all so unique to the artist. Many oracle decks are themed just like tarot, so you can have the moon or astrology or chakras or crystals. Like every single topic seems to have a tarot or an oracle deck for it nowadays. So there's generally a lot of themes running through them, or a certain expression running through them. So there's no difference in that essence. Like they are both unique expressions of the artist's kind of uniqueness and what they want to get across. But oracle is more unique in the sense that every meaning is unique to the author or the artist. You know, every card, what they have put in the guidebook and everything about it is just 100% unique. Whereas tarot, there's that kind of theme running through it that is consistent with all of tarot. So like I said, you're either kind of drawn to tarot, or I think you're not drawn to tarot. You either love the set system or you don't love the set system. But you know, if you're not really sure if you are drawn to that or if you do like that, then maybe just let the deck speak to you. You know, if it happens to be a tarot deck that you fall in love with, great. If not, then maybe Oracle's the one for you if that's the deck that you love. What I will say though is that I had two tarot decks when I first started working with cards, and I worked with oracle cards to start with, and I did have two tarot decks, and I didn't really click with them. And so I kind of painted tarot with that brush of, oh, I don't really click with it, even though I had this feeling of I loved tarot, but I just didn't click with the cards. The readings never felt really resonant. And it wasn't until I got my third tarot deck, which was the Light Seers deck, which I'll show you in a second. It wasn't until I got this deck that I fell in love with tarot. So it was like I needed to have that deck that I fell in love with. And so yeah, maybe you do have some decks but you don't really feel drawn to them. It might not be tarot, it might be the deck isn't quite right. So do explore other decks before you kind of rule out the practice of tarot. It's a little bit like you know, if you go to one yoga class and you're like, I didn't like that, you can't rule out all of yoga. You know, like every yoga teacher is different, every like practice of yoga is different. So it's like the kind of the same with decks. If you really don't resonate with your deck, maybe it's just the deck, it's not tarot itself. So I do also want to say that. So yes, time to go through some of the decks. So I'll go through the Light Seers deck to start with, and this was the first tarot deck that I really clicked with. Like I said, I had two tarot decks before this, and I would pull cards, they just wouldn't really do anything for me. I felt like they didn't really resonate. This deck though made me fall in love with tarot. And so this is the Light Seers tarot deck by Chris Ann. She's amazing. If you don't follow her on Instagram, you should. She's great. I think it does always help to love the authors that you are like working with their cards. So this comes with a beautiful guidebook, and what I will say about Chris Ann's guidebook is her way and expression of explaining each card in the tarot deck is so beautiful, like so beautiful. The way that she articulates things, her take on it, I'm obsessed with. And honestly, this is how I fell in love with tarot. So her guidebook is adorable. And then her cards have got a really kind of boho. I don't want to start with the devil. But her cards have got quite a boho. Oof, that's not a happy card. Type feel. So they're very colourful. There's a lot of energy in them. Just showing you random ones. And what I love about this tarot deck specifically is that, and this is a great example actually, is it's very clear by the picture what the card means. And so yeah, you've got the guidebook, which is great, but also you don't need the guidebook for long because it's very, very clear what the card means. Like you can tell that she's kind of not happy, right? You can tell that maybe she's quite sad, things aren't going to plan. You can tell that she is maybe going down a little bit of a downward spiral right now. Now, when you then look into this card a little bit more, you can see, just get it in the light, you can see here, there's a really full cup of something going on there, but she is clearly looking at all the ones that are not full. And so this is a card of like, you know, focusing on essentially what you don't have, what's not going right, versus the really full bowl next to you. And so this is a really kind of great example of a card that just, when you really look at it, you can actually really see what's going on. And although, you know, a lot of decks do show this, in my opinion, this is one of the most powerful decks for doing that, for really showing you so clearly what's going on. And when you're learning tarot, that is so incredibly helpful. Like, so incredibly helpful. Because whilst you can really learn the meanings of them all, it really helps to get started with. If you can kind of get an idea of the energy of a card just by looking at it. It really helps when you're learning. And some decks, which I'll show you soon, they don't really have that as much. So yes, I love this deck for that reason. And I do feel like you can see here, they're all working together to kind of create something. So this deck really does have a really beautiful boho type feel, which I love. Now also, she just brought out a mini version. So it comes in a little tin. Comes in a tin. And it's a Diddy version of the same deck. And honestly, even the guidebook is Diddy. It's the cutest thing in the world. So if you love it's the same card that I just showed you, but if you love a kind of pocket deck, something that's quite easy to take around, this is a great idea. It's so incredibly cute, like so cute. So I love this deck. I haven't actually really used this pocket version, but I obviously had to get it because it's the cutest thing in the world. So that is the Lightseers Tarot deck. So then I used that one for about 18 months, I would say. I used it like non-stop in all of my sessions in my own personal practice for about 18 months. I then found this deck, and this is the Saint Soleil Beginners, what's it called? Lucid Dreams Beginners deck. You can see that. Now this is the older edition. I do have a newer edition here in black as well. So the box is now changed, the box is now updated, but this did used to come with a separate guidebook. And this deck took my readings and my love for tarot to a whole new level, and I already loved it. But this deck is incredible. I'm honestly one of the biggest fans of Saint Soleil. I've got 2 decks of theirs here. I have another one on its way. And to be honest, it's not long before I get that Oracle deck either, because it's also beautiful. Now, this deck is slightly more expensive than a normal tarot deck. So the Lightseers deck that I just showed you is kind of a normal tarot price. It's like between 10 and 20 pounds, like in the UK, which is a very normal price from a normal publisher like Hay House, for example. Saint Soleil decks are more expensive. They are around £60-ish, I think, between 50 and 60 pounds. But the quality is a whole new level. Like, you can't really see, I feel like you can never see this in any type of picture, but there is like woven feeling, texture to the cards. And can you see all the gold foil? These cards are like another level quality wise. They are so incredibly beautiful. And so I love them. The also amazing thing here, which is why they're called a beginner's deck, is that they have all of the words, like the keywords at the very top. So you don't need to actually use the guidebook if you didn't want to, and I barely ever even use the guidebook. So it's great for learning tarot because you don't need to keep referring to things, although, like, you know, that is how you learn tarot, is you do keep looking at the guidebook, and over time it kind of sinks in. But these just help to not need to do that. So they are a really, really great deck. And I love them so much that I did buy them in black as well. So I'll just show you one more. So that's the, I can't remember what they call it. I think it's blush version, they might call it. And then this is the black version. So it's in a much bigger box. This does come inside the box, but for some reason I've not got it inside the box. It's huge. It's like a book, but it's so great. Some of the information at the beginning as well is so great. It kind of gives you a lot of tips for learning tarot. So this is a really great guidebook to come with a deck. And then this is the deck itself. And so this is the black version. So this is the pink and this is the black. So this is the same. It's the Lucid Dreams Tarot Saint Soleil deck. And because it's a lot newer, you can see the gold foil is a lot more, what's the word? Like, it's stronger, I guess. So this is also a really beautiful deck. And the new nude version or blush version, whatever they call it, comes with the gold writing as well. So there are also some images that are updated. So if you were to get the blush version now, it's kind of more similar to this in terms of how the writing is and some of the images, and the gold foil and the box. So my nude one is an older version, basically. So I love these decks. Honestly, I love the energy of them. I love the energy of the brand. I really do. Like, big fan. This is not sponsored in any way, shape or form. I just really love everything they do. And I just love how easy they are to learn tarot. Now, when I did start using this deck, I did already know tarot, so I've never used them as a beginner. So I don't know how much they kind of advanced your skills in terms of retaining in this information, because you might end up relying on them. But you know, if you're using this deck, you don't need to learn the tarot as much, right? Because you've got the keywords there. So yeah, I didn't use them as my first deck. I used the Light Seers, so I do also kind of want to say that. Now, this deck, going back to the pink one, isn't as clear or obvious in terms of the meanings of the cards as maybe the Light Seers deck is, but they are still fairly obvious, and you have the keywords, so it doesn't matter. So this is a really great deck to start with. It really is. So that's the Saint Soleil beginners or Lucid Dreams beginners deck. I do have their advanced one on its way to me, so I'm very excited about that one. But then the next deck that I've actually recently got is the Danielle Knoll Moonchild Tarot, and this is the Shadow Edition. So she has a light edition, she also has a Shadow Edition. Now I tend to really like quite a, what's the word, muted color scheme. That's what I want to say. And so as soon as she brought this out, I was like, that's my deck, because I've always loved her as an artist, but for some reason the decks just haven't kind of like called me in. And then she's brought this deck out, which has got a lot more of a muted kind of color tone to it. These are gold foiled on the back as well. Also, the back is, I don't think you see the texture there, but it's risen up. It's the most amazing texture on these cards. Like, again, these are more money. These are a similar price to the Saint Soleil, but if you have the ability to invest that, they are worth it in their quality, like 100% worth it. Like the Saint Soleil ones are as well. The quality is just a whole new level. Like, there's no comparison. The card stock itself is super thick, and just the back is almost like suede on the back. It really is a dream. Big fan. And I have started working with this deck over like the last month or so. And something that I do when I first get a deck is I pull cards every day to start to connect to it. I regularly go through the deck as well. And this is how I connect to my decks. And so now the accuracy of the readings coming from this deck are mind-blowing, because I've spent that time getting to know my deck. So honestly, I would pull every day for probably about 3 weeks at least before I use this with clients, because I only want really accurate like readings with my clients, right? Really resonant readings with my clients. So I didn't use this for my clients straight away. I waited until my readings were feeling like, okay, well, what? That's when I started using this for clients. And just to give you an idea of the accuracy of your readings, when I first, like maybe 2 weeks in with this deck, I would pull cards from this deck, and I would then also pull cards from the Saint Soleil deck, which I was very, very connected to, still am. I would pull the same card, and I've pulled the same card from both decks on the same day 4 or 5 times at this point, and it's why, like that's how accurate your readings can be, but only when you're really connected to your decks, because of the reason I've already kind of said. So in order to kind of get attuned to your cards, you need to spend time with them. Like you need to get to know them. You need to be pulling cards every day, and maybe not every day they resonate to start with, but the more connected you get to the energy of every card, the more you're going to be guided towards, like, you know, the card that best matches where you're at that day. And so I couldn't suggest more, when you do get a deck, pulling from it every day until you feel really, really connected to it. Like it really is a game changer with how accurate your readings are. So this deck is truly, truly magical. Like it really is. But what I will say is that this deck, although it's beautiful, it's soon, you know, it's up there with being nearly as lovable as the Saint Soleil deck, but it's early days. We're giving it time. I don't know how easy it is for beginners to use this deck, because the picture, although there's an energy to it and you can feel it in the guidebook comes with it, is beautiful. It's not extremely clear, right? So there's no words on it other than the name of the card. So you do kind of need a rough idea of what each card means to use it without the guidebook. Whereas like the Saint Soleil obviously has the keywords. But Lightseers is much clearer, I think, of what each card means. And so although I'm so fine working with this card, like you might not realize that this card, for example, means the circulation of money, so giving and receiving, right? There's no indicator of what that means, but the Six of Pentacles is this kind of circulation of abundance. It's giving, it's receiving. And so that's quite difficult to kind of maybe grasp from this card. Whereas the Lightseers, that's maybe a lot more obvious. So that's what I will say. Although these cards are insanely beautiful, I'd say they're more friendly for someone that's quite accustomed to tarot. And this is actually a bonus card that she's put in there. So she's got the 78 tarot cards, and then she's put, I think, 2 or 3 of her own in this deck, which is quite cool as well. So really, really beautiful deck. Really beautiful deck. And I believe I saw it on her Instagram that she's also bringing out a smaller version soon, because they are quite big cards, like in comparison. Like they are bigger cards. So if you've got little hands, they can be quite hard to shuffle. So I actually tend to shuffle upright with these cards versus that way around. But she is bringing out a smaller version of it soon, I think. So I'm sure that will be making its way into my collection because I love them so much. So that is the Moonchild deck from Danielle Knoll. So the other deck I want to show you that's a tarot deck is not mine, it's borrowed, but I wanted to show you this because I actually do really like it. If you're kind of drawn to the traditional tarot, like the Rider-Waite deck, then this is an updated version of that, like very updated. It's a very modernized version. But I think it's quite funny in how it's done it, and it's quite cool in how it's done it. So this is the Modern Witch tarot deck. This is a super accessible price as well. Like I said, this isn't my deck, this is borrowed for the purpose of this video. But this is like the Queen of Swords. So this is really similar to the original Rider-Waite deck, but just very updated. And so like there's new technology in it, for example. It's just kind of a lot more of a more modern version, and it's got a little bit of humor in it as well. So this is quite a fun deck if you do like that original energy of the decks, but you know, maybe you don't resonate with the Rider-Waite specifically. These images are fairly clear what they mean, but definitely not as much as the Lightseers. The Lightseers still wins in terms of being the clearest of what the card meaning is to what the image shows. So yeah, this is a fun deck, and just a bit more of a light-hearted kind of version of the Rider-Waite deck, I think, because sometimes the Rider-Waite deck, which is the original deck, feels, well, It's the original deck of modern tarot, but it can feel quite dark and quite heavy. So that is tarot. They are the tarot decks. Now, the oracle decks that I want to show you, only 2 are mine. Wait, is that right? Yeah, only 2 are mine. But I want to show you this one, which is a fairly new oracle deck for me. And this is actually the only deck I have here that I don't know about the author. So I've not actually looked her up. I kind of generally know about all the other authors and follow them and love them. But this is the Spiritual Awakening oracle deck. 52 Universal Law oracle cards. And so this one here is really beautiful imagery. It's also gold foiled. I do love gold foil, if you didn't notice already. And the back is also really beautiful. But these are a great price point. They're kind of a normal price point for cards. But each one essentially has a universal law on it. And I think that that's really beautiful. And I don't know, because I'm not familiar with her, if she is like outwardly a channel. But these messages on these cards, the reason I got this deck was because all of the messages on these cards is something that I've received through. Maybe not in quite the same way, but they all come through kind of in some way or another through my own channel, through my own work. So I really resonated with all these messages. And normally I don't really resonate with oracle cards. So I do love this deck for that reason. I think when it comes to oracle, you really do need to resonate with all of the meanings of the cards, like the energy of the cards, what is said about each card, because it is different to tarot and it is unique to the artist. And so it's not about just getting kind of a random oracle deck that looks pretty. I think you also really need to resonate with the messages that are on the cards as well. So this is a really beautiful deck. And there's 52 cards in this deck. So oracle, like I said before, there's no rules with how many cards can be in the deck. So that was the Spiritual Awakening deck, and that is by, I believe, Reverend Dr. Erin Full Haskell. And I got these off Amazon, actually. So, actually, in terms of where to buy, so there's a UK stockist that sells all the Saint Soleil and Danielle Noel decks that's in the UK. So if you are based in the UK and you don't want to pay for the shipping and duty, which can be quite a lot with these, with Saint Soleil and with Danielle Noel, then there's a UK supplier that sells them. So I will put the link for you to look at them, because they sell great decks, but also you don't have to pay the shipping and duty or wait that long, which can also be quite a wait. So that was the Spiritual Awakening. Then we have, this was my original oracle deck. So this one, I'm not sure if I got Light Seers first or this one first. I got them at quite a similar time. But this is the Angels and Ancestors. I've just realised it's rubbed off, which isn't very helpful. Hold on, let me show you. Oh my gosh, we're having an accident of cards. This is the Angels and Ancestors oracle deck by Kyle Gray. And if you don't know who Kyle Gray is, you should. He is wonderful. He's the angel guy. He has loads of decks. I've got 2 decks here to show you of his. This is the deck that I have though. And again, this has got not so much of a boho feel like the Light Seers, but maybe more of a shamanic-y feel is what I would say this deck has. So this is a beautiful deck. The meanings are great. This is a great price point as well, super accessible price point. And yeah, the meanings as well I love. And what I found really funny was I've done one of his card courses, and when he was talking about the inspiration for some of these, for his decks, he said that the inspiration for this deck was tarot. And so it did make me laugh, because the one oracle deck that I had at the time was actually taken from tarot. So there are some cards that really are very similar to certain tarot cards. So it's a really, really beautiful deck. Like I said, it's got quite a shamanic-y, boho-y type feel, but really powerful. I worked with this a lot. I got really accurate resonant readings with this deck. So I have a lot of love for this deck. So that's the Angels and Oracles, sorry, Angels and Ancestors Oracle deck. And that's the front cover once again. So you can get these ones off Amazon, but just be careful that they're not copies. He gets a lot of people copying his decks. Or you can buy it from Hay House directly, which is the publisher. So we love that one. And then on to some of the borrowed decks. I've got 2 more decks, and these are both borrowed for this. Another one is Kyle Gray. So this is his Angel Guide deck. And this is, I think, one of his most popular decks, like for angel cards. So if you work with angels or you love the energy of angels, this is a really beautiful deck. Again, great price point. Yeah, the meanings are strong, easy to understand, powerful. Sorry about the ring light there. And yes, there's such a strong angelic energy through this deck and all of his work. Like, he is the angel guy, so there's no doubt about that. But you can just feel a frequency through these cards and through his guidebook. There's such like a channeled angelic energy, which is really beautiful. So if you are into angels or guides or ascended masters, Kyle Gray will have a deck for you. He's great. Sorry, that light is not ideal. So for example, like this one's spiritual growth, right? So a really clear message that's quite obvious what it means. Now what I will say is, when you want a really accurate reading, then having, as I said, being really connected to your cards is the first big step to that, but also having very, very clear intentions of what you want the cards to show you or like share with you. And also working with spreads is a game changer for having really resonant and accurate readings, because for example, like that card I just showed you of spiritual growth, depending where you pulled that in a spread depends what it means, right? It could either mean that you've been having so much spiritual growth, it could mean that you are meant to start working on your spiritual growth, or it could mean something like you're blocking your spiritual growth, right? Or maybe this lesson is showing you that you are needing to grow spiritually, or this lesson is for growth. Like, there's so many meanings that that one card could mean, depending on the intention that you ask and also where it shows up in a spread. So if you want really resonant readings, it's not like a big part of it is the cards, but also the intention that you ask and also the spread itself. They make the world of difference. They really do. So then the last deck I'm showing you is the Work Your Light deck from Rebecca Campbell. And I think that this is one of the most popular decks that exist. I think everyone has this deck or knows this deck or has seen this deck or has had readings from this deck in one way or another. So this is by Rebecca Campbell. And Rebecca Campbell is a beauty of a human being. Now her decks, and she's got more than one, I think she's got maybe even 5 or 4 or 5 at this point. Her decks are, firstly, I think the first few anyway, are illustrated by the same person that created the Moonchild deck. So there's the similar beautiful images. But the deck itself has such a feminine energy throughout it. Like, Rebecca Campbell is the definition of feminine essence, and so her cards have just got this incredible feminine energy going throughout them, and they all have a slightly different theme. I know she's got a water or ocean based deck and also like a rose based deck, all of which are beautifully illustrated and have all beautiful different meanings. Yeah, she's got a no and a yes card. So that's like no, which is quite cool in a deck. So all of the cards have got this real divine feminine thread going through them. This is the back of the deck as well. And so I know so many people who really truly resonate with this deck on every level, and it is such an incredible deck. I've had a lot of readings with this deck. I've just never been drawn to actually work with it myself, but it is truly an incredible deck. I love this. Trust the niggle. So, like, you know, what is the niggling feeling trying to tell you? And like, that's just such a great card to receive, right? Again, depends on your intention, depends on where it is in a spread, but it's just a really beautiful message. So this is a great deck. All of her decks are great. I've already shown you that one. So this is like the Great Gathering. It's all coming together, intuitive hits and soul tribes. So a beautiful, beautiful card. So yeah, that's the yes card. Rebecca Campbell is a great go-to if you're looking for more of a feminine energy oracle deck with a lot of beauty, like beautiful illustrations, and also for a really great price point because it has all that standard kind of oracle deck price point, and beautiful guidebook as well. They all come with guidebooks that I've shown you, I think. Yes, they have all guidebooks. So yeah, Rebecca Campbell, and like I said, actually, like all of the authors here, I also don't know the Modern Witch author, but all of like the Saint Soleil, the Danielle Knoll, the Lightseers, Kyle Gray, I love all of them. Even Rebecca Campbell, like I follow them, I love them, and I think that's also something that's really beautiful about having a deck is when you really connect to the person that's created it as well. I think that does help to kind of connect with the cards. And so that is all of the decks that I wanted to show you. But like I said at the beginning, I think when it comes to choosing a deck, firstly, think about, are you drawn to tarot or not? Like, is that already clear for you? If it's not clear for you, let the deck speak for itself. Like, if you choose a deck that just feels beautiful and it is a tarot deck, that's your sign. If it's not, then you know it's an oracle deck. So you can kind of really let the deck speak to you. Or if you know that you're drawn to that practice of tarot, then you can specifically look for a tarot deck and choose a tarot deck. Or you might know that you're just really not drawn to tarot, so you know that you want an oracle deck. I do also feel like when you first start, for sure, having less decks is easiest because you can just really build that connection with them. Like I said, I had the Lightseers deck for about 18 months solidly, and then I had the Lucid Dreams Beginners Tarot deck for about 18 months solidly, and they were the only decks I used during that time. So I only used this for that long and then only used this, and so I think that that does help to just really build a strong connection. It's only now that I have been buying more decks and playing with more decks, but even when I get a new deck, I still just use one at a time to start with to get connected to it. So like I said with this deck, you know, I've used this on its own every morning for like 3 or 4 weeks to build that connection. Like I haven't used other decks myself, unless I'm doing sessions, then I obviously use the deck that I'm connected to then. But I think that just having that one-on-one time with a deck just helps to build that connection. And also if you're learning tarot, I think it really helps to learn with one deck. Even if anyone says to me like the Six of Swords, I think of the image in this deck. Like that's how like the first deck, tarot deck, can really ingrain into you. It's like taught through this deck. So even though I've been using other decks for so long since, if someone says to me like, oh, I'm really feeling, you know, like a Four of Pentacles energy right now, I'll think of the woman holding the purse, you know, like that's just how I kind of think of it. And so it just kind of shows you that if you really use a deck consistently, like it does sink in, it really does. And although there are many courses out there that are amazing for learning tarot, I've done so many courses and oracle, so many courses, but I honestly just want to say that I think the biggest teacher for me was just practicing every day with your deck. So whether or not I had sessions, I would pull every morning for myself with tarot, and every card I would, to start with, I would just look in the guidebook at what it meant, and then I got a really good idea of what they meant because the pictures were so clear. And so that's how I learned, was just repetition. Like courses are helpful to teach you about spreads and teach you about things like that, but with the practice of tarot and learning it so it sinks in, practice, 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 as with all things. So I hope that that was helpful, maybe giving you some inspiration, giving you some things to think about. Like I said, I think a big thing to think about with your cards is that it's clear what they mean from like the picture or the image to get started with. After a while, once you've learned tarot, that doesn't matter as much because you know what the card means. But to start with, I think that it's really helpful to be able to tell instantly what the card means or the energy of the card. I think that really helps the practice. So yes, hopefully that's given you some inspiration, some things to think about. And I will put all the links to the decks that I've shown you and also the website that you can get some of these decks from in the UK as well. If you are UK based, I'll put that in there as well. Yeah, thank you for watching, and yeah, sending lots of love.